In today's video, we're talking Chinese weightlifting and why are they so good? We're going to be taking an in-depth analysis of Xiaojun's snatch technique to see if there's some things that we can pick out around his technique that we can implement into our training. So I'm going to try and break down Xiaojun's technique for you now and kind of highlight a couple of things that I see that are a little bit different from a technical standpoint in comparison to where we see the rest of the world. So we're going to dive into it. The video that we're going to be looking at is from 2019 World Championship. Now in this competition, he goes 165 miss, 165 make, which we're going to talk about a little bit, and then a 171 make as well. But let's start off and take a look at this 165 miss lift. There's one thing that I kind of notice when it comes to Xiaojun's technique is he sits extremely upright in his start position. Now Xiaojun has an extremely long torso and he still maintains a position regardless of him starting super low, that when he pulls from the floor, his hips do rise a little bit, but you'll see at the most important part during the lift, these two lines are still pretty much parallel together. So from his start position to his knee, although his start position is very low, he maintains the exact same angle from the floor to the knee. And his shoulders, as I said, still remain over the bar at this point. Now, as he comes through into extension, he stays extremely tall. One of the things that I love about this technique in particular is you'll see at this point when he hits his top position, how he keeps his chest the leading point. Now, a common mistake that a lot of people make in this middle phase of the lift is that they let the shoulders lead and the chest collapse, which means the upper body takes over, which means you don't maximally get to utilize the leg extension through this middle phase of the lift. That's definitely a first key takeaway point from Lu's technique that I'd like to see a lot more people start to implement. As we progress through this lift, low start uses the legs. As he comes through to extension or through the middle phase of the lift, what you'll notice is how close the bar stays to the body through this middle phase, which is absolutely incredible during this transition. Keeping the bar nice and close at this point makes it much easier for you to stay on flat feet, which you can see he does really well right the way to the end of his lift, whilst keeping the arms staying completely relaxed. I almost like to think at this point that the arms are almost like string hanging down here and the legs are doing all the work. This means that when you hit this top position here, which in essence, I think is probably part of the reason why he misses this lift or struggles with it being a little bit in front when he ends in the catch, is because he doesn't quite get up onto his toes as much as you possibly could in the snatch. This is something that I see Lu do a lot. He doesn't have the greatest amount of foot movement when he lifts, which he's an amazing lifter, so I hate saying this is a bad thing, but I think if he moved his feet a little bit more consistently, he might have even better technique than he does. Because if you look at this missed lift from the front angle, he starts with his feet quite wide, but if you watch specifically his feet as I play through this, you'll see how one foot moves and one foot doesn't. So look at this foot here. You'll see how this foot moves out and this one doesn't. It means that he sits into that right side a little bit in his catch position. And as a result of that, you'll see the difference in his lockout position. You'll see this arm's kind of slightly internally rotated here, and this one's staying externally rotated a little bit more, which is why we see a better lockout position. If you look at the difference in the two arms on the dotted joints, this one is definitely better over here versus this one here. Definitely something that I think affected his lockout position in the receive of this, which meant that as he was recovering for this lift in particular, he had to check the lift a little bit on the recovery. So that was quite interesting, and then he misses it. What I'll do is I want to skim through anyway and have a look. Something else that I noticed through the middle phase of the lift. After extension, which I think was a little bit short for him, he didn't hold this top position as well as he normally would do. The bar moves away from the body a little bit at this point. We come back and have a look at the successful lift. You'll see that everything from the floor up until this middle phase is pretty much exactly the same. But through this extension bit, you'll see that he actually gets his hips through a little bit more in this top position and gets a little bit better rise onto the toes at the top here. You see the difference in the feet here compared to the lift before, which ultimately means that the trajectory of this bar stays a little bit closer to the body through this middle phase of the lift, which means that when he comes into his receive, the bar's just that little bit further back in the catch position, which makes it a little bit easier for him to stay nice and tight in his receiving position and ultimately save this lift nicely with the 165. It's still obviously a little bit in front at this point because he takes a small step forward, but I definitely think that that was a big difference between these two lifts. But equally, you'll see even on this lift that the feet don't move much into the catch position. I'm probably gonna get absolutely slaughtered for doing this, but we're gonna have a go anyway. It's Xiaojun. I know he's amazing. I know he snatches world records, but there was still something that I noticed that maybe if he did a little bit differently, he'd go up a couple more kilos. And I wanted to talk more about that foot movement. So what I was talking about with his snatch technique, which is extremely efficient, I know, and he is very good, I know. But what you'll notice is as he was coming through his snatch position through here in the middle phase of lift, one foot sort of slid and the other one didn't. And it meant that he kind of sat into one side here, okay? Which, again, could be tightness in the hip, could be an injury, but we're guessing at this point. I just know that something that would help work on more consistent foot movement would be something like the snatch balance exercise. Now, I don't know if he does a lot of this in his training, but if you're someone like Lou who struggles with foot movement, this is what I would do. So when I do my snatch balance, I purposely start with my feet super close. The whole benefit of this is to get used to coming up into extension and the feet moving out consistently into the catch position. Remember, if the feet move too wide in the receive, even if you've got good mobility, it's gonna cause those knees to collapse and for you to struggle to find optimal depth. So making sure that the feet move out into the right position for you is key. This will allow the hips to sink nice and deep into the bottom position. So just watch my feet again. Starting with them super close, dip, drive, feet move into the receiving position. Adding in something simple like this alongside maybe drop snatch balance, potentially help Lou in that bottom position. Ultimately, one thing that you'll notice that does stand true with Xiaojun is how good his mobility is. His ability to sit nice and deep in the bottom position whilst keeping his knees out above his toes is absolutely incredible. Naturally, you'll see lifters that lift like this, instead of necessarily his knees tracking further forward in the bottom position, which his don't really in comparison to a lot of lifters, you'd see much better range of motion kind of in the ankle. He actually sits with his hips super low and his chest super upright. Lifter to lifter, this will change, and this just really comes down to proportions of the body. All in all, this guy is an absolutely amazing lifter and one of the best snatchers there is in the world. And I think it really comes down to, more than anything, is discipline in his pull and through this middle phase of lift that allows him to be so good. I think one of the best ways for any athlete to improve when they're doing the snatch, to be disciplined in the first phase of the lift, is to actually make sure you start off by moving really slowly. If you start off by moving really slowly and ingraining a good movement pattern, over time you'll naturally be able to speed up and execute the pull efficiently, fast, but keeping it in the right position, which will really help with consistency during trajectory, but also allow you to keep the upper body staying completely out of it during this phase so that legs do the work. If you can let the legs do the work without the upper body kicking in too much at the top of the lift, this will also really improve your ability to move dynamically into the receiving position and get nice and tight before the bar is then in the catch. Guys, I hope you enjoyed taking a look today at Xiaojun's technique. If you enjoyed this video and you want to get your video analyzed by me and breakdown of your technique, then all you need to do is hit the link in my bio and you can register, as each month I pick one of you guys to have your lift reviewed by me. So go ahead, join my email list. You'll get loads of free information, tips, tricks, etc., and stay all up to date with everything Lifting Zone. And you know, next month, this could be you getting analysis.